and welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to part 2 of I read every Pride and Prejudice retelling that I can get my hands on. We have the modern retellings to get through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly run through these because obviously if you've watched the vlog part 1 most recently, you already know what they are, but for those of you where you didn't watch it 5 minutes ago, I just thought I would recap them and just kind of give you a rundown because some of these are sequels that aren't actually Pride and Prejudice related, but I'm going to read them anyway. I had originally, when I started filming this back in January, assumed that I would do this in 3 parts, where it would be traditional, modern, and then sequels. There are a couple of sequels from the previous video that I'm not interested in, such as Sense and Sensibility and Sea Monsters. I've decided against it. I didn't rate the book very highly. It didn't rank very high in my ratings, so it's just not gonna bother. And then the other one is the other Molly Greeley book, which I think is another Sense and Sensibility spin-off. I have no interest in that one either. So I will do the sequels in this video instead. I'm hoping to get this done at least by the end of July, but hopefully within the first couple of weeks because I'm going on holiday and I would like this to kind of all go up around the same time. And seeing as that video only went up yesterday, I need to get moving. So the first one is Pride and Prejudice and Other Flavours by Sonali Dev, and I also have Recipe for Persuasion, so a Pride and Prejudice and a Persuasion retelling. This is by a BIPOC author. So this is a Bollywood style love story set in Chicago, and this one is kind of, I don't know if this is like just straight up a sequel or if it's a spin-off, but I'll find out. I also have Pride and Premeditation and Sense and Sensibility then, Sense and Second Degree Murder by Tertia Price. These are Pride and Prejudice retellings but with a murder mystery element to it. I do think there is still going to be a romance. I very much get enemies to lovers vibes, but here for that one. And then the one that I know a lot of people have been really excited for me to read is Pride by Ibiza Boy, which is again the modern retelling but set in the US with Afro-Latino roots. So really excited to get to those 5. I'm going to be starting with Pride and Prejudice and Other Flavours because this is an audiobook on script and it means that I can get through it quicker whilst I'm doing other work and things like that. But what I'm going to do is the same as I always try and do. I'm going to try and get to the 100-page mark and then catch up and give you my initial thoughts before moving on. Because this is going to be over a shorter period of time, there won't be as much B-roll in this one, so it won't be quite as majestic as the last one was, but hopefully it won't be quite such a ball ache to edit either. So yeah, anyway, if you haven't seen the first half, go check that out, but if not, I will catch up with you in a bit when I've reached my 100 pages. For context, I have a baby, so that's why it's a weird angle. But I want to talk about how mad I am. So I've had like really nice comments on the historical fiction edition of the Pride and Prejudice vlog, which has been wonderful, thank you so much. But I'm now into the modern retellings, and as I said when I did the intro, I have started with Pride and Prejudice and Other Flavours. But before I talk about that book, I want to talk about Bridget Jones' Diary. Now, this is one of the most prolific Pride and Prejudice retellings, but the book itself is actually kind of problematic, and the film is not my favourite, but I did really enjoy it when I was younger. And it's just after the whole thing with Pride, Prejudice and Zombies and the fact that I don't own it, I just decided that if there are films that I enjoy but the books are not great, I'm just going to avoid them. But I do want to say that what I really like about Bridget Jones is you don't have to know it's a Pride and Prejudice retelling to enjoy it, right? So it has Mr. Darcy, which does make it nice and obvious, and you've got the main character Bridget, who is useless and kind of silly, which is not like the original. But the way that she and Darcy banter with each other is very reminiscent of the original book. And then she obviously has her Wickham-esque character, who is her boss. And the love triangle between the 3 of them is very similar to Pride and Prejudice, but obviously differs for modern context. And in the meantime, she's out there discovering herself, which is really important. And it's a really interesting one because it's very clearly a Pride and Prejudice retelling if you know Pride and Prejudice. So if you watch it, you can pick up on those things. You've got the ridiculous mother, the sarcastic father, you've got the friends that act as like the silly siblings and things like that are all dealing with their shit. But it's very much Bridget's story. It's modernised in a way that makes it individual to that. And I don't mind that. I don't mind a modern retelling that feels like its own thing. However, if you call yourself Pride and Prejudice and Other Flavours, I do expect some Pride and Prejudice in the story. I don't think that's too much to ask. So the first chapter essentially sets up Tasha, who is a neurosurgeon. She is the black sheep of the family because she did something awful, or her friend embarrassed her or something years ago. It hasn't really been clarified this early on in the book, but essentially she's embarrassed herself because her friend Julie Wickham was involved in something with her brother. It's not explained at this point, but just her whole family, except for like her sister, doesn't really like her all that much and is kind of embarrassed by her, even though she's a neurosurgeon. I get the impression it's meant to be like a real like Indian thing, that like because she's not followed the family tradition of politics, it's still not good enough, but I don't know, because I'm not part of an Indian family, so I don't know. But I'm finding that frustrating. And Darcy in this instance is a guy called DJ Kane, who is a chef. And he's not Darcy, because he is not someone of the same social status as her. She comes from aristocracy. Her family were Indian princes, essentially. I think her dad's nickname is HRH, which is like His Royal Highness, etc., to show that he is still technically of that royal line, whereas DJ is just, I mean, I also hate the name DJ. That's neither here nor there, but I hate the name DJ. He is a chef who, as far as I'm aware, like his parents are dead. Like it's just him and his sister, and his sister we've already met, and it's already been established who she is because it's established in the synopsis. She needs brain surgery. She is going to go blind, and he is basically paying for it. And he works a function for Tasha's family, which is where they meet. Now, in Pride and Prejudice, obviously they meet very briefly at a ball where they are equals, where he feels superior, but they are equals, right? In this instance, they're not socially equal, because she is a family member of the politician that they are having this function for, whereas he is the chef, but he's working. He's there at work. So regardless of the fact that we live in a modern society where everyone's equal, you're not if you're flirting with a server. Like, that's not equal. Anyway, they don't flirt, obviously. What they do is they have a row about something really inane, and she says shit that is out of context stupid. So she nearly burns her hands, and she basically turns to him because he's making caramel, and he gets really arsy about her like nearly taking out his caramel, which, having worked with chefs, is probably the most accurate thing I've read so far. She basically says, like, do you not know how much my hands are worth? And then she explains to him that she's a surgeon. And like, he obviously shows her no deference, because who would in that situation? And they're both as bad as each other. But with the original Pride and Prejudice, neither of them are like actively rude to each other's faces. Darcy is rude about Lizzie for sure. And in his mind, he's justified because he doesn't want to dance, and he certainly doesn't want to dance with someone who hasn't been picked by anyone else in the room, considering there are so many men in the room. So for him, he's kind of saving them both from that embarrassment. Now, he's wrong, and he's rude, and he learns, and I'm sure DJ will learn not to be an asshole if someone gets in his way, but they're not equals, and they're not treating each other with respect, let alone any kind of civility. And it just doesn't feel like Pride and Prejudice. I'm now 60 pages in, and other than the phrase, it's a truth universally acknowledged, there has been no Pride and Prejudice reference whatsoever. Obviously, like, there's the surname Wickham, which kind of gives you an indication that something's happened. And I think maybe they had an affair with this politician, the brother that's the politician. But you don't know for sure. And I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed that this second blog is going to end with, like, is going to start on such a rocky footing, because I want my Pride and Prejudice references. And if this book had any other title, I feel like it would be fine. But when you go into a book expecting it to be a retelling, and there's not even the hint of a reference in the first 60 pages of a 300-page book, like, if I got to wait, are you going to wait to make a reference? Or, like, I don't know. It's weird. It's really weird. Because even, like, the heiress and the other Bennet sister, I mean, even Longbourn, right, which is all from, like, behind the scenes, and, again, very similar to this, probably could have been about any other family and would have still been accurate, or didn't actually need to reference the family directly for it to be quite clearly a Pride and Prejudice retelling. And I think I said in the last video
that if it had been more like Hamnet, where it had implied that it was part of the Darcy family or the Bennet family, but not actually said outright that they were, I'd have enjoyed it more. This one, I'm like, I would have enjoyed this as a romance if they had just said it's a Bollywood romance and not a Bollywood retelling of Pride and Prejudice, because Pride and Prejudice, where? And I do remember there was a Bollywood slash Hollywood film that was a Pride and Prejudice retelling that was, she's from an Indian family and he's from a British family, and it's like a whole thing. I won't be watching that one because I don't remember enjoying that very much. But I'm really disappointed. I was really hyped for this one because it's a BIPOC retelling, and I thought that would give it that modern feel that some contemporary romances lack anyway, let alone a Pride and Prejudice retelling. But this is really disappointing. And I'll be honest, I'm really tempted to DNF because I don't think I want to pick up the Recipe for Persuasion either, which is the second half of this. And like, I feel like I just want to avoid it now. Like, I'm just not interested in reading it. So I might swap to Pride, which I've heard really, really good things about. But I'm working currently and I need something on in the background, and it's either going to be that or music. And I'm more inclined to listen to music just because this is really disappointing. I haven't even put it on Goodreads that I'm currently reading it yet, and I might just DNF and unhaul it. I'm already really disappointed in it, which is gutting, to be honest. But yeah, 60 pages in, and it's just it just feels like a waste of time. So yeah, I'm gonna try Pride, and if I'm not vibing with Pride, I'm going to assume that it's as a bad taste left over from this one, and I will just listen to music. I want my Pride and Prejudice retelling references. I want my references. I want my Lizzie Bennet to feel like Lizzie Bennet, even if she's not called Lizzie Bennet. And I want my Darcy to be an adorable little muffin who doesn't know how to speak to women. That's what I want. I don't want him to be an asshole. Very disappointed. Anyway, my cat is... Okay. My cat is falling asleep is what I was going to say, but he nearly fell off my lap. So I'm going to go put him in his bed. I'm going to get some more work done, and I'll see you when I've reached 100 pages of whatever it is I decide to pick up next, which will probably be Pride, whenever that is.
Okay, it was definitely the book and not me, because I have burnt through this version of Pride and Prejudice. Pride is set in Bushwick, the USA, and it is about a young girl called Zizi who basically is Lizzie, but there are certain things that have changed within this narrative versus the original. For example, in this one, she is not as accepting as the Darcys or Bingley, as he's called Ainsley in this, and she does not like the fact that her sister and this guy are together. She is still embarrassed when Darcy interjects and kind of separates them, but she wanted her sister all to herself because her sister has moved away. So there is a lot more of like a familial relationship in this one, as opposed to just sisters trying to get married, etc. It also has a lot about going to university and striking out on your own, and how important their culture is to them, with the area being gentrified, which is really important. And I didn't realise that the audiobook was going to be narrated by Elizabeth Acevedo, who is one of my favourite authors of all time. And because she writes poetry and she writes novels in verse, you can tell in the audiobook when she gets to the poem bits of Pride just how much they mean to her, and the fact that the Latinx Haiti representation is very important to both her and Ibby's a boy, and I really enjoy that. I feel like that's really prolific in this book in particular, and I will be really surprised if this doesn't get 5 stars, because even if it doesn't make me cry, I just feel like it's so beautifully crafted. I literally cannot fault it. As a rendition of Pride and Prejudice, or a retelling of Pride and Prejudice, it stands wholly on its own. And if you have read this already and you want other books that kind of remind you of this, I would definitely recommend the West Side Story, or Nottingham Carnival West Side Story by Candice Carty-Williams, which is a YA that is a Romeo and Juliet retelling / West Side Story retelling. I would say that the writing style is very, very similar. The fact they're both targeted to YA, and the fact they're both by BIPOC authors, taking on these classics and giving them that BIPOC twist, whilst it being authentic and own voices, is super important, and would absolutely recommend both. Because Olivia was actually the one that recommended this to me in the first place, I have taken a little page out of Olivia's book, and whilst I was listening to it, I decided to make myself a raspberry cheesecake. But I didn't realise when I started it that the recipe says that I'm not just chilling it for like an hour, it has to sit for 6 hours. So in 6 hours time, I will show you what it looks like. But in the meantime, here's a little bit of B-roll of what I've been getting up to whilst I've been listening to this book. So I'm an idiot on 2 accounts, because not only is Pride and Premeditation not a modern retelling, it's not very good. It's okay. It's nothing special. And I will say this. So essentially the premise of Pride and Premeditation is that 16-year-old Lizzie Bennet, so younger than she is in the original, is trying to solve a crime where Mr. Bingley is caught up in a murder charge, and Darcy is his lawyer, and she's kind of doing some super sleuthing behind the scenes. I will say, already better than Death Comes to Pemberley in the fact that Lizzie is an active protagonist. She's going out there and getting clues and things like that. There are BIPOC characters, there is a discussion of class, etc. And it is modernised in those ways that's actually much better than Death Comes to Pemberley. I really like the fact that the mystery is actually happening on the page. The downside is they've already set up Caroline Bingley to be a red herring. I initially thought she would be the antagonist, but obviously Wickham is still a character in this, so there is every possibility that he will be the one that did it, or at least involved in some way. So it's difficult. There aren't many new characters or characters from like the extended world of Pride and Prejudice that have been added to this. It does, however, establish Lizzie as someone who is very forthright and very active, which is similar to the original, but she's also just not very good at listening. There are many occasions when people will tell her not to do things and she does them anyway, and I don't know how I feel about it. So, like, I'm annoyed because I've done the same thing with this vlog that I did with the last one, which is I've managed to read the best one slap bang in the middle, and I am already feeling like I don't want to read Sense and Second Degree Murder, because I'm just not feeling Pride and Premeditation as much as I thought I would. I love a procedural mystery when it has that kind of outside element as opposed to like a standard procedural, but it's just not giving what I need it to give, and I'm just really annoyed. I'm really annoyed that it isn't as good, and I'm also really annoyed at myself because there's nothing in the synopsis or the descriptions or anything that says that it's like a historical one, like it's set in the era. I just assumed that because they were working in law, it would be modern. And I feel like actually if it were modern and she were the same age as Darcy, because Darcy's like a few years older than her and like a practicing lawyer, and she's not allowed to be a lawyer because she's a woman, so she's doing this all very sneaky like. I feel like if they were on that even footing, I would enjoy that more. And if they had the access to evidence the way we do now in modern mystery and in real life, I would enjoy that more. And the fact that she's having to like work through these particular means whilst also being very wary not to cause a scandal, etc., because of it being when it is, I'm finding that frustrating. So I am going to finish this one, but don't hold your breath, I'm going to do the sequel. This might be the shortest vlog I've ever done, which makes sense because the last one was the longest vlog I've ever done. So swings and roundabouts. But I have the house to myself this evening because Lizzie is at work and Zach comes in on a flight later. So I will finish this before I go to bed, and then I will let you know what my decision is regarding continuing, because chances are I'm just going to wrap it up and tell you how it ends. So, see you in a bit.
Guess I won't be selling this copy then. My cat decided to eat it. That's the most interesting thing that's happened so far. I took 6 months to read the first 5 books of this Pride and Prejudice vlog, and I have DNF'd 1, finished 1, and unhauled 2 of the second part. What an anticlimax. I am so genuinely disappointed with the modern retellings of Pride and Prejudice because they just abandon the premise entirely. And it's one thing using fictional characters to develop your own story, but these just feel like weird fanfics that don't actually do anything with the original text. Like, they've just got the main characters' names and stuff, and like the Darcy in Pride and Premeditation is just a grumpy asshole, but not in a way that actually like benefits Lizzie. And I don't know, like the whole thing, I just didn't enjoy it. I gave Pride and Premeditation 3 stars. I'm not even going to bother ranking them because, quite frankly, the only book, again, that I would recommend out of this list is Pride by Ibby Boy, which is fantastic. And if you're a big fan of his writing, Elizabeth Acevedo, I feel like that is a book that you'll really enjoy regardless of Pride and Prejudice, but also because of Pride and Prejudice. So go check that one out. I'm sorry this vlog has been such a fucking mess because the first part I was so proud of. And then this bit, not so much. But if there is a classic that has like a whole bunch of retellings that you would like me to do another big vlog for, do let me know in the comments down below. I really appreciated in the comments of the last vlog just how many of you recommended some other great retellings, so I will definitely be checking those out. Treat yourself to something from Waypoint because it supports me in my content, and most importantly, have a nice day.